Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and today we're doing NuclearRevenge. Now I have seen this mega post which has been written by the mod Claycam5 and it's 10 NuclearRevenge stories and a bonus story at the end. So I thought we could get into it together. Here we go. Progress Report 10, Mega Edition. Divine ass beating, expensive nudes, a crappy donut, and more. Hello, this is our 10th progress report where I will cover the bottom of the barrel NuclearRevenge content. Now, I had to put this mega progress report off for over a month because I needed my brain cells to re-multiply so I could have a functional brain again for Thanksgiving and Christmas. But once that wait was over, I was ready to ruin my IQ once again for you, the people, so you don't have to. So here it is, a mega progress report with 10 stories and even an interesting bonus story at the end. Let's just see how nuclear these stories are. Or aren't. Try not to get radiation sickness, alright? Number 1. OP met a woman 5 years ago and over the years they were good friends, until they eventually became friends with benefits. This was all fine and dandy until she wanted to get married and have kids. Basically tie him down by the balls. OP did not want this. He only wanted to remain as bang buddies. So this woman decided to pretend to be okay with his choice at first, but would end up forcing a child onto him by pretending to take birth control. One day, they discovered that she is pregnant. OP was not happy about this. She forced a pregnancy against his will. OP realized that he is on the hook for child support. He deems his life to be ruined. He wants revenge on her for frigging him over, literally. And so he comes up with his bright idea to make her life just as miserable. Knowing that where he's from, when it comes to personal debt, it's owned by both spouses regardless of who created the debt. This is part of community property laws. So OP convinces his now wife to merge their bank accounts for convenience, but really it was so he can have access to all of the money. He then started to buy a lot of expensive stuff for him and his friends. OP stated that he made these purchases in a blitzkrieg style, swiftly and intensely until he managed to burn through about 55k in 2 months. After that, he maxed out his credit cards, financed a Dodge Charger and took a mortgage on a $300,000 home. His wife tried to stop him, but couldn't due to the community property laws where he can legally share his debt with her with a simple signature on some paperwork and she can't do anything about it. Once he had created a mountain of debt, he quit his 6-figure salary job so they couldn't garnish his wages. So only his wife has to pay for the debt he created on top of her student loan, which was another 50k. And she was at risk of losing her job due to the debt. Once the damage was done, he left to go live with a friend. God damn. Summary. Super life pro tip. Don't want to pay for child support for 18 years? Commit financial suicide with a lifetime worth of debt. Destroy your credit card and then quit your high paying job so you can never pay for it. Genius. If he was able to sign over his debt over to her, that means he made her broke with a pen stroke. His evil wife is really suffering now. There's no way that he's the bad guy here, right? This is a reasonable response to a woman that has you by the balls. Right? Story 2. OP is out camping with his grandpa, and he brought his grandpa's vintage survival stove that was a gift to him. This survival stove was issued to his grandpa when serving in the Wehrmacht during World War II. At one point, OP is teaching his grandpa how to use his own stove that he survived with. Well, unfortunately his grandpa ended up ruining the stove somehow when OP was sleeping, which angered him. They yelled at each other until they both pulled out Mauser pistols on each other. Grandpa's failed to fire, and so OP shot him in the arm and stomach, then packed up and left his grandpa to die in the woods. Apparently justice is a lost cause in OP's country, so we got away with it. Quick summary. What year is it again? Who brings Mauser pistols for camping? Wait, this veteran doesn't know how to use his own stove that he survived with? Maybe it's just Alzheimer's? Or maybe it's a bull story. But if not, that means a Nazi died. Not so bad. Story 3. OP read a story in a Book of Faces post where a woman scammed small car businesses out of a collective total of 20k in car parts, basically getting the services done and not paying for them. Well, one of those companies that were scammed posted about the issue on the Book of Faces, and eventually the user started researching the woman mentioned. They found her personal information, family's personal information, all of their Book of Faces profiles, and even this woman's nudes. On top of that, she also has a huge lawsuit against her and may be on the hook for fraud charges. Summary. The world's most expensive nudes, they better be worth it, But overall, she still got over 20k in car parts. Sounds like she won, not them. Sounds like a story of some mad lad woman who single-handedly bankrupted a small business as she pimps her ride. Looks like the shop can't fix that one. Story 4. Actual post. Sorry for spelling errors, I'm on mobile. About 2 years ago, my boyfriend at the time thought it would be a good idea to cheat on me with one of my friends. My friend told me without telling him. I was friggin' pissed. So about a week later, I had let off some steam, but when we were in bed, I decided it would be a good idea to give him a BJ. So I bit his D, and he friggin' screamed. Like I've never heard a guy scream that loud. TLDR, my boyfriend of 3 years cheated on me, so I bit his D. Summary. That's not how head works, unless she is literally trying to swallow his D. Poor guy got recircumcised. His D probably looks like a surfboard after a shark chomps it. Story 5. A kid that was nicknamed Little Jerk by OP is a town thief that often broke into cars and stole various items. One day, OP's grandpa walked out to his car only to discover that Little Jerk was breaking into it. Upon being spotted, he ran away with the car radio into a nearby church thinking it was safe. Unfortunately for him, that church hosted martial arts classes every few days, and they were in the middle of a class when Little Jerk ran in. The grandpa walked in and said, "That little jerk stole my radio," and then the whole class proceeded to beat the crap out of Little Jerk. In a church. Summary. In the name of the Lord, stump him in his spinal cord. Fear God in this ass beating. Bash his head on the aisle seating. You ought to be slapped by Mother Mary and fricked up by a missionary. Little Jerk thinks he's a beast till he's in the hands of the church priest. Beautiful. Story 6. Actual post. So one day my father told me a story how he saw a kid getting bullied in high school, so he went up to him and said, "Knock it off." So he got his brother to come fight my father. Time to meet the cast. D1, dumbass 1, D2, dumbass 2, D3, dumbass 3. So then he swings on him, but my father dodges it and smacks him real hard in the face. He punched him 4 times and broke some of his bones. Then dumbass 2 attacks, swing and a miss to the hospital, to you, to D3 just ran because he was a wussy. And my dad said, how does it feel to be disabled? What is this? The kid getting bullied was mentally disabled, but this was the olden days, so he got smacked with a cane at school and smacked at home. Summary. I feel like a dumbass after reading this. I'm right with you there. What? What was that? Story 7. OP says his cousin was beat up by a guy she refused to have sex with. He reported the incident to the police, but they weren't doing anything about it since this guy is the local sheriff's son. At one point, OP took his cousin to his house and hid her in a room with the biggest gun he had while he set out to find the guy. Since this guy was a hunter, OP and his friend decided to invite him over for a hunting trip. When this guy and the friend showed up, OP snuck in camo and pretended to knock his friend out with a rifle butt stroke. Then he held this guy at gunpoint and told him to strip naked. At first he refused, but a shot into the ground next to his foot convinced him to take it all off. He then forced this guy to walk through the woods naked through thorn bushes, water, etc. He even made him crawl through mud puddles. Once he was broken and crying, OP knocked him out with the rifle before abandoning him in the woods. OP later burned the guy's clothes. He was forced to walk home naked. And apparently he also confessed to his crime and got sent to prison for a long time. Summary. Oh, looky here, another fake Rambo story that doesn't add up. Looks like the hunter got hunted and stripped of all his bearings. Why would he make him strip naked and then get all wet and dirty? What fantasy is OP into? Also, there's no way one could lightly hit someone with a rifle, pretending to knock them out and still make it believable. That would hurt either way. Story 8. OP was in the 5th grade and was being bullied all year. But next year, when the bully tried to hurt him, OP finally snapped with the rage of 1,000 bully victims and turned into the badass out of nowhere. He then smashed the bully's face into the wall and floor, leaving knocked out cold in his own blood. Here is the aftermath that ensued, nicely put into a list by OP that I copy-pasted. 1. He was hospitalized for 3 days. 2. He never picked on me again. 3. Literally everyone feared me, including the teachers. 4. I got a 3-week suspension. 5. I get lots of respect and no one talked to me in a bad tone or way. 6. I made a friend, his name was Lucas, and I protected him from other bullies that were picking on him. I told the bullies that if I ever caught them picking on him or anyone again, I personally would leave them hospitalized like I did with Sean. They stopped, and Lucas is still my friend to this day. 7. I basically owned the school because everyone feared and respected me so much and because everyone followed my orders to the letter for the rest of middle school. Summary. Ah man, no classic swirlies? Sounds like the bully will need it to wash the blood off his face. Story 9. OP is a vindictive AF vengeance seeker who was cheated on by his girlfriend 4 years ago, who later dumped him to be with another guy. Eventually she wanted OP to take her back, which he didn't agree with at first cause he put her on probation and told her she can't prove me she is serious while he can still date other girls. A month later he officially takes her back in order to begin his revenge. He started off by being shameful and derogatory towards her over time, calling her fat and dumb, etc. Then he started degrading her in bed by slapping her, pissing on her, forcing her head down, and not helping her finish. Basically selfish sex. 4 months into all of this, he got tired of it all and decided to put up a final act. He arranged 3 of his buddies to join them, which she was forced to go along with because he said he would leave her if she didn't go along with his fantasy. This lasted 3 hours. Afterward, he told her to leave and that he didn't want to see her again. OP justified this by saying he's a vile POS and pretty much owns it. Summary. Another super life pro tip: if your girlfriend cheats on you, make her sleep with your friends for revenge. Bonus points if they're random guys. Yes. Story 10. I could describe this story, but OP does it better, so here's the actual post. Wasn't sure if my previous exact post in this went through because I was in bad Wi-Fi, so I'm trying again. Sorry for the subpar formatting, I'm currently on mobile. English isn't my first language, so I would like to apologise for any grammar mishaps in this post. I'm a Dunkin' Donuts employee in this city, and we put up with a fair share of rude and entitled customers, but it's part of the job, so we put up with it. Anyways, we have a pretty consistent customer that's always giving us trouble. We'll call him Corblex III. Corblex III always orders a Boston cream donut every day, but constantly complains on the quality of said donut. It's Dunkin', what do you expect, buddy? Also, he never gets a different donut, so this confuses me. He will butt in front of the other customers and shove people to get his order, and we've had to deny serving him a few times and escort him from the place for yelling obscenities. Anyways, about 8 months ago, Corblex III stopped showing up at our store, only to make a reappearance last week. I think his parole may have ended. I've heard rumours he was on parole for assault of a Walmart's employee down the street. This kinda puts us all on edge. It was an unpleasant surprise when Corblex III showed up, but he wasn't shouting or acting out. It was odd. He really seemed like a changed man, as he was dressed much nicer and had his hair cut neatly. He ordered his usual Boston cream, and at some point, not sure when, headed into the restroom. Later that night, as I worked the later shift, I went to clean up the bathrooms before closing. I go into the men's room and into stall 1 to find a revolting sight. There was a massive piece of feces left unflushed in the toilet. What kind of barbarian would not flush? I physically gagged at the sight, wanting to vomit. I cannot fathom how you could forget to flush. The pure disrespect. I go to check security cam footage, as I've been with Dunkin' Donuts for a while now and I'm trusted, and see when people walked into the bathroom. Many customers went in and out throughout the day, so to most people it would be impossible to tell who did not flush. I am not most people. I go back to the bathroom and scoop that large piece of feces out of the toilet, poke my finger in it, and taste the grainy and smooth particles floating around in my mouth. Oh god, I nearly gagged. At first I'm getting an earthy yet oaky taste, but then it hits me. The feces specimen is 3 hours and 46 minutes old. based on the amount of fermentation I'm getting from the sugar still in the feces. I checked the timestamp on the footage for 3 hours and 46 minutes ago. Hold on. Oh my god. Oh, a bit before actually, the Kachi went into the bathroom. And there it is. Corblex III enters the restroom. I should have known. There was something entirely off about him. My revenge starts to form in my head, as absolutely no one can just lay feces in our toilets without flushing. I'm frothing in anger. I put the feces from the toilet in the Dunkin' Donuts fridge for tomorrow and call it a night for now. I don't think I'm gonna make it through this story, my god. The next morning I begin my plan. I take the feces from the fridge, let it defrost and melt, and put it into one of the Boston cream icing bags. I make a donut in the deep fryer as normal, and squeeze the feces icing bag into the centre of the Boston cream donut I have prepared. My mouth waters as I'm dreaming of the sweet taste of revenge. I won't put up with Corblex III's crap, so I decide to give it right back to him. Haha. Corblex III comes in at his normal time, swaying back and forth like the usual normal douche he is, and asks for a Boston cream donut. My heart races with excitement as I hand him the donut. He thanks me. Yeah right buddy, you're still a douche for not flushing, and is on his way to sit down. I watch him for a little bit so I can get a good look at his face when he bites into his own poop matter donut. He sits down and raises the donut to his face. He takes a bite, and his eyes open wide. Corblex III starts to go into cardiac arrest and seized everywhere. People are shouting and crowding around him. Meanwhile, I go up to Corblex III, take the uneaten part of the donut and squeeze the remaining fecal matter into his eyes, just so he can get that good pink eye if he even survives his heart attack. Spoiler alert, he didn't. He was driven to the hospital where he was later proclaimed deceased. In the meantime, I smiled to myself, knowing my plan has worked and he got what he deserved. This serves as a reminder to all of you to flush and have good bathroom manners, or you too might end up with a poop donut. The summary. I am not most people. Yeah, you got that right. You literally analysed a piece of crap with your mouth as part of your investigation. You put Sherlock Holmes' investigations to shame. Forget fingerprints, we got crap samples. Bonus story. The best fake sounding story ever submitted here. An Arsonist's Tale by Nobody Important 94. I live in a small town in the States on the coast. Not many people live here, but I've never lived anywhere else. I'm not a bad man, I believe. I always thought I was relatively kind. I live with mental illness, but I never thought it affected me too much. Sure, I heard voices, sounds, saw a hallucination or two, but I took my medicine every day and my days were relatively fine. Now, about my former friends, I thought they were good people too. Sure, they had mental illnesses too, depression, autism, and one of them saw hallucinations like me. Back when I was still allowed to drive, I was the only one in the group that could. We all played Magic the Gathering down at the local card shop, or played video games at my friend's house. My mother worked at the local sandwich shop, so I was able to get food for free and bought it to my friends. We all had a good time. Then one day, I stopped being able to drive. My illness acted up and I would go to a comatose state for a few hours. I found out later that these were seizures. I stopped being useful to my friends. We grew distant. All of them but one all lived in the same house, so they all saw each other every day. I still lived with my folks. I still talked to my friends online a few times, but the times grew further and further apart. I tried going to their house a few times too, but I always got turned away at the door, or they wouldn't be there. Finally, after almost a year later after being unable to drive, I managed to get into the door one day, and I was greeted unceremoniously like that year of no contact never happened. The friend that owned the house then finally told me that the reason they've been avoiding me was because they didn't like having discussions, or arguments as they called it, with me. I never even knew that they thought we were arguing. Nobody ever got mad. I thought it was silly, but the friend didn't see it that way. I thought I could just talk this out, but my friend was autistic and his social skills were not up to par. I eventually left the house feeling more unhappy than ever before. I then found out a month later that my friends were all talking negatively about me behind my back through a confession from one of my schizophrenic friends. They nitpicked everything I did throughout that entire year I wasn't able to drive. One of them even went offline a few times when I tried inviting them to play with me. It eventually came to a point where they stopped acting like friends with me and would only interact with me when there was something in it for them, either money or food. I contemplated killing myself. I hated the way they made me feel about myself, like I was only useful for the things I could provide, not the person that I was inside, and the voices in my head agreed with me. Then the voices gave me a plan. Burn down my friend's house and make them feel as much despair as I possibly could. So I started preparing to do so, and I knew exactly how. You see, the neighbour of my friend wasn't a very good person. He was loud, obnoxious, made an ass of himself everywhere he went, and most importantly, was an avid smoker and an abhorrent drunk. A little spark is a dangerous thing, you know, especially when my former friend kept old gasoline in a few jerry cans in a shed in his backyard and never kept the battery in the smoke detector. You see, he wasn't very careful with his jerry cans either, often spilling some gas in the grass in the backyard when he mixed up gasoline for his mower. He hardly ever used the mower himself and often let his grass overgrow, but he let one of his friends use it and he always liked to mix the gas up himself. I know gasoline usually evaporates over a few days, but that didn't bother me in the slightest. I knew it was a probable enough cause for a fire, and it would probably be taken into consideration by my friend and the authorities when everything went down. Back to the neighbour. I knew what brand of cigarettes he liked and would use them to make that awful bastard look like he lighted the fire, after I spread fresh gasoline all over the yard. It was pretty easy to get into the backyard, since it connected to the front through a little alley that didn't have any windows from the two houses looking into it. It took a few months after conceiving this plan before I was able to carry it out. A few days before I was legally allowed to drive again was when it happened. I carefully drove my car to my friend's house through the back alleys of our town in the middle of the night, all the while carrying with me a couple of full jerry cans of gasoline and a pack of golden camels in the back of my car. Once I was there, I put on some old leather gloves and quietly started splashing gasoline all over my bastard friend's backyard and then all over the side of their house. Once I was finished, I lit a cut down cigarette so that it looked like it had been smoked and threw it into the grass near that a-hole's neighbour's fence. I found a lot of his already used cigarette butts in my friend's yard, so I had no doubt that he would get blamed for this soon-to-be inferno. After the cigarette hit the grass and I saw a small fire start to quickly spread, I immediately left and never looked back. As I started to hear the fire spreading all over the yard, I knew my vengeful mission had been accomplished. By the time I got back to my house, I had already seen fire trucks speeding down the main street towards my friend's house. I had a more peaceful sleep that night than I'd had in months. Once I woke up later that day, it was already time for the afternoon news. My little act of revenge was already the top story. 2 out of the 3 friends that lived in that house died that night, and the third one was sent to the intensive care unit for 3rd-degree burns. 2 of the neighbours' houses also caught fire when all the gas that was kept in the shed exploded and set the surrounding wooden fence on fire. It was ruled as an accident after an investigation, created by a drunken neighbour's cigarette butt which landed in the overgrown yard. The explosion caused by the gasoline in the shed caused such a mess that my spread gasoline was attributed to that. It's been a few months since then, and my former friend that survived is now severely disfigured and is permanently disabled. He had to move back in with his folks, and they treat him like crap for not keeping the battery in his smoke detector and letting his friends burn. Yes, the autistic friend was the one that survived, but seeing fire still makes him freak out. All I know is that I won't miss any of them, and I hope their bodies rot in the ground they get buried in. The moral of this story is keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Knowledge is the best weapon you have, and a mentally ill person as a friend can be one hell of a vengeful bastard. I still think I'm a nice person though. Yikes. End of report conclusion. Well, there you have it. 9 terrible stories and 1 great story to make your new year that much better. Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask me how. Just know that some of these can be found over in r/notsonuclear sub. This has been your Mega Progress Report. Thanks, Manhattan Mod. That poop story nearly actually killed me. Okay, so that's all for r/NuclearRevenge. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!